over 350 stitches almost did me in. And then that first setup row, oh my God, is there anything worse than the first setup row of like knitting onto a cast on? Oh, and to do it for 350 stitches, kill me now. Hi everyone, welcome to Beads and Skeins. My name is Chloe and today I have a regular knitting update for you. I have 2 finished objects, 4 whips, a new swatch. There's a lot going on in this house. If you want to support the channel, you can like the video, you can subscribe, you can leave a comment. I love hearing from you and it's much appreciated. One of my finished objects is what I am wearing today, which is my Brume sweater. And just before I get into talking about all the details about this project and the yarn and the pattern, I wanted to share that my friend Natalie over on the channel Knit Cheek and I are going to be hosting a knit along in a few weeks. So it's called A Sweater for Summer and it's going to run from April 1st to June 30th. The whole point is to create some kind of transitional sweater or garment, I suppose. Whips are welcome. No need to finish your project. It's going to be pretty loosey-goosey. We do have some prizes that we're going to use, which is going to be super fun. And the hashtag that you can use over on Instagram is A Sweater for Summer. I'm really excited about it. I know what I'm going to be making. I have swatched for it. And I'm going to be sharing more information kind of a little bit later in the month. But I just wanted to let you all know now so you can start kind of thinking about what you want to make and potentially getting some yarn if you need to. The intention of the KAL is to create some kind of in-between style garment. I am going to be working on a long sleeve sweater, but it's going to be lacy, so it'll be open. And also the fiber that the yarn that I'm going to be using is a blend of fibers, so it's got alpaca, cotton, linen, and silk. So it lends itself to be a little bit more of like the summer friendly. It's really open to interpretation. Everyone lives in a different climate. Some people will want something extremely light, some people want something a little bit more heavy. It's up to you to decide, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you're all gonna make. So with that, I wanna talk about my Brume sweater. I finished this a few weeks ago. I've been wearing it a lot. I love the color. The color for me is the whole point. So, this is the Brume sweater by Andrea Mowry. It has a higher neck than I normally do, but it is, I guess, about a 10 centimeter mock neck style, turtleneck style, whichever. It's knit as a raglan, has quite a boxy fit over the shoulders and chest. I modified mine to have 3/4 sleeves. Other than that, I followed everything exactly to pattern. The yarn that I used is Farmer Daughter Fibers Oudang DK in the color York, which is essentially, I just copied Andrea Mowry's sample. She wore it in one of her podcasts that I watched a while ago, and I loved the color. And I was like, I need that. So I made it. I knit the size 5 on 4.5 millimeter needles, and it has created like a very loose, open fabric because it is a Sari alpaca. The only real structure in this yarn comes from the silk core. Everything else is just fluff. So knit on a 4.5 millimeter needle, it's like quite open and airy. It's so light. I used 3.4 skeins of yarn. So 340 grams. I think it was less than 800 meters. I used 765 meters of yarn, which for a garment that, you know, has this much positive ease on about 120 centimeter bust, that's like no yarn at all. Because the gauge is so loose and open, there's not a lot of structure to it, but because of the fluff, it's still really warm. Even though there is the 3/4 sleeves, I find myself overheating a little when I'm inside. For the neckline, it does kind of relax and sit against my neck, but because it's a Sari alpaca, it's not itchy at all. But I wish it would like sit up more, you know? I feel like when Andrea Mowry sample, maybe it was just the way they took the photos, which is also possible, but it feels like it sits up like this, like a bit more like a boat neck. Mine sometimes starts that way, and then as I wear it and move around a little bit, it relaxes into more of a mock neck style, which is also fine, but it's not quite what I wanted. But I'm not bothered, you know? It's not what I wanted, but I'm not bothered. So this is my first ever time working with this yarn. It's incredibly soft. I did get some color transfer onto my hands as I was working with it. It is quite a saturated color. I'm not sure if that's normal or not. I have not, like when I wear a lighter colored t-shirt or lighter colored pants, I'm not getting any color transfer now that it's blocked and washed. But just something to keep in mind that, you know, if you're working on it, maybe don't have your whitest gloves on. I don't know, who knits with gloves? Not I. Anyway, and also the only other thing with this pattern is I really struggled with the ribbing. Because it is so open and drapey and has no structure whatsoever, the ribbing just kind of exists and is loosey-goosey in a way that I don't like. And I didn't know what to do about it because as I was knitting it, I was kind of like, I don't really know that I like the way that this looks. But I'm gonna finish it because blocking may change what it feels like, may change what it looks like. And so what I ended up doing was I knit the ribbing, I bound off using Judy's surprisingly stretchy cast off because there was no way in heck that I was going to be doing a sew and bind off in this yarn. It was not happening. And I really didn't like the ribbing. As I was finishing it, I was like, I don't like this. Like I was looking at the whole, like the garment as a whole, and I was like, I don't know that I'm gonna be wearing this at all because I really dislike how this ribbing looks. But I'll block it, I'll see what it looks like. I blocked it and I was still kind of like, I don't know about that. Like, not into it. But then I've been wearing it a lot anyway. It kind of like, it's grown on me. I have been wearing, so full disclosure, like I love it now that I've been wearing it. At the time I finished it, I didn't really like it that much. Like I would say if I could give it a cast off hype between 0 and 10, I would say 5. Like very meh. And then I've been wearing it, and the way that the ribbing is so floaty and drapey makes me feel a little bit like hippy dippy, which is kind of fun. And then like I like the way that it just like sits around my hips. It doesn't cinch in at all. Which when I think about kind of like when I'm reaching for this sweater, it's, you know, like first thing in the morning, we're having coffee, I want something cozy. I still want to feel cute because I think that the style of this neckline and the color suits me really well. And I feel like adorable when I wear this. But then because this ribbing is so loose at the bottom, like around my hips, it just kind of exists. You don't notice it. It doesn't cinch in like other sweaters might. And I found that for this particular sweater, I actually really like it. So I'm just gonna stand up and I'm gonna show you what it looks like. Oh, I just kicked a cat. Oh no. Sorry, Ariel. Oh. So this is my sweater. You can see what I mean, where like this ribbing has never heard the word structural integrity. Like structural integrity, never heard of her, you know? But I think it like suits the style. Like it's very loose, it's very open. I'm wearing it to feel cute, I'm wearing it to feel cozy, and that is what is achieved. That is everything that I have to share about my Brume sweater. My final thoughts on the project are that I really liked working on it. It knit up so quickly because the stitch gauge, I believe, is 17 stitches per 10 centimeters. So it just flies off the needles. I really love that this one is particularly lightweight just due to the fabric and the fiber that I used. But I do think it would also be equally amazing in a more structured yarn. And I think that maybe then that might solve my irrational irritation with the way that this neckline doesn't stand upright. Those are my final thoughts on the Brume sweater by Andrea Mowry. I am looking forward to wearing this a lot. At the end of the year, I'm gonna report back on if I end up wearing this a lot. I have been wearing it, but you know how that is. That you finish an object and you're like, ooh, it's perfect. I'm gonna wear it every day for 2 weeks. And then after that initial hype, sometimes you put things away and then they don't get worn for 6 months. So we'll see. My second finished object is the Amy Slipover by Sandnes Garn. Oh, it's so pretty. I'm gonna put it on. My second finished object is the Amy Slipover by Sandnes Garn. This is in their pattern booklet 2202, which is called Softly for Women. I have wanted to make this pattern for over a year, and I've finally done it. It just finished drying this morning. So to make it, you cast on the entire back panel, essentially just knit down to the hem. You have a little bit of increasing shaping for the arms. You pick up at the front, create the neckline, knit down while increasing for the arms, and then you do the ties and the armholes, which are connected, and you knit them lengthwise, and then you do the neckline. I made so many modifications to this pattern, so many. So let's just go through them. First, I switched out almost all of the 2x2 rib. So the pattern calls for 2x2 rib at the hem, on the neckline, on the ties, and on the armholes. I switched it out for other things everywhere except for the ties. I don't really like 2x2 rib all that much. I don't know why. I feel like I go through phases. Along the neckline and the hem, I swapped it out for 1x1 rib. And then along here, I switched it out for a double layer of stockinette, and then I left it as 2x2 ribbing for the ties. The next modification that I made is I did a series of increases on both sides of the turtleneck just to help make it a little bit wider at the bottom. I didn't want to style it the way that some people do with it standing upright. I'm never gonna wear it like that. Having fabric around my mouth gives me the ick. Hard pass. I wanted more of like a folded turtleneck style. So when I was doing the turtleneck, I just did increases right here. So it kind of creates like a bit of a trapezoid, and then it folds down and it's nice and loose, which is more kind of what I wanted. I have no interest in having a tight turtleneck. Kind of similar to the Brume sweater, I didn't want it anywhere near my neck. I want it to be what it is. This is what I wanted, and I made it. The final modification that I made is I changed the armhole edging. So the pattern calls for doing 2x2 rib here along the armhole. I didn't want to do that. So what I ended up doing is I would cast on for the front part of the tie. I picked up stitches as directed, and I would cast on for the second part of the tie. But I just left little markers between where the tie attached to the body. And then as I was knitting, I knit the ties in 2x2 rib, but then for the body, I just knit in stockinette. When I reached the width that I wanted, I cast off for the tie. I then did a purl bump, which maybe you probably can't see, but I did a purl bump here just to help it fold and lay nice and flat. Then continue working stockinette until I then doubled the width, and then just bound off. I did like a pick up bind off where you pick up and bind off a stitch as you go to create a double layer of fabric. I like the additional structure that this gives. Sometimes when I've seen Amy slipovers, it almost looks like t-shirt like it's very relaxed here, and I don't know why. I just wanted to do something different. I wanted to make life difficult for myself is what I'm thinking and understanding. But so far in the 6 hours since this is dried, I have really liked it. I put it on, I love the color, and I'll talk about the yarn in just a second, but I like the look that this gives. I think it's quite clean, and I would do it again. If I were to make another slipover of this one, I would do it again. The yarn that I used is Witchfire Fibers non-superwash fingering merino and their classic Sari in the colorway Clove. Can we just have a moment of appreciation for this yarn? One, the color, amazing. So good. For me, I love it. It's like it's like cinnamon brown. It's the perfect cinnamon brown. Also, getting a saturated dye to take on a non-superwash yarn is hard. I don't know what kind of witchcraft is happening over at this dye studio, but I believe her name is Jess from Witchfire Fibers gets a round of applause because this is so good. I am sometimes disappointed when I get superwash from indie dyers because the dye doesn't take very well. It's like very flat and not what I wanted. This one, oh, so good. I bought 3 skeins of each yarn, and I have a full ball of Sari left, and I have 90% of the last ball of fingering, so I still have enough to make a hat or some gloves or something. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. Something cute though. It is expensive yarn, so I'm gonna use it for something nice. I'm got another cat. My goodness, they're just everywhere. So this is what it looks like over top of my dress. See, I am a little bit unsure of the length. I think it could be longer, but I want to try wearing it with pants first. But I really like how clean this edging is. It does have some broken rib along the edges there as well. And overall, I think that this pattern was fairly clear. It did for the, what's it called? For the ties, it did recommend doing some kind of pickup, like a cast on with a crochet hook. Wasn't gonna do that. So I just did regular. Maybe had I looked into that a little bit more, like that maybe was a bit confusing, but I was never gonna do it anyway. I really liked knitting this pattern. I really loved the yarn, the combo. It's so incredibly soft, and I was just really excited to finally make it. Now that it's done, this is the first slipover, well, it's the second slipover that I've made, but I did gift the other one. I wasn't wearing it, wasn't my style, so I gifted it to a friend. This is the first one that I intentionally was picking a pattern that was more my style because I wanted to wear it, and I picked a color that I liked because I wanted to wear it. I think it's going to be the case, but we'll have to check back in at the end of the year to see how often I actually wear this. I think it's so cute though on top of this little dress, so I could see myself definitely wearing that fairly often. My first whip is the Aiode sweater by Sari Nordlund. I've made some pretty decent progress on this since our last check-in. I am at the point where I'm going to bind off the bottom hem. Originally, I had thought that I was going to stop and then do the sleeves and then come back and finish the body of the sweater, but I'm a little bit unsure about how deep these armholes are. I had to extend the length of the front of the sweater, partially in order to get the pattern to line up so that when I joined, I would be on the same row of the chart repeat. But also, in my VV pullover, which I knit a couple months ago, the front yoke is too short. So when I joined in the round, there's too much fabric in the back, not enough in the front, and then it does this weird thing where when I'm wearing it, the fit in the front is off, and it kind of like creates this weird triangle pucker in the front of the sweater, and it kind of irritates me. Like I don't notice it like feeling wise while I'm wearing it, but it does bother me that that happens. And so this was gonna have the same issue, so I fixed it. But it also means that now my armholes are really deep. But there is no body shaping for the size that I knit before joining in the round. So that means that when I'm done the body, I am going to block it, I'm gonna see how it's fitting, and then I might seam closed that hole just a little bit. I haven't picked this up in a few weeks. I got to the point of being done, I think, on the bottom hem, and I was like, great, the next step is the bind off. And I was like, maybe later. So I actually, like, my next step here is going to be binding off. I'm making it a little bit more cropped because my intention when I picked this pattern was to wear it over top of a dress. And then so for that, I want it to end pretty close to my natural waist. And also because it's so boxy, it's gonna be quite oversized, and this yarn is pretty structured. It's heavy, it's structured, it's gonna be a bulky sweater, and I just think that having it cropped is gonna be a cuter look, I guess. I think that if I continue all the way down to my hips, it's just gonna maybe look too big. I don't know. I'm not gonna find out because I'm not gonna keep knitting it down to that length, but I think that this is pretty close to the perfect length for what I want. But I'm just gonna double check before I bind off by putting it on some try-on tubing. I'm really excited. I mean, I love this color. I'm in a phase. Of cinnamon brown. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be doing a lot more work on this spring. I mean, I would like to get it done, but also I'm really excited about other projects that I have. And this is already my longest standing whip. I cast this on in August, and it's just one of those things that I've been picking up and putting down. So just whenever the vibe strikes, whenever the feeling strikes, that's when I'm working on it, but I'm not gonna make myself finish it just to meet some arbitrary deadline. It'll also be quite a heavy sweater. It's gonna be quite warm. I am probably not gonna get that much wear out of it, even if I finished it tomorrow, because it's quite nice. It's nice right now. My next whip is brand new. It is the Candy Dot Throw by Alexandra Tavel. This is a mosaic striped blanket, and it's a free pattern. I am following the guide for the stitches for how to make the pattern. I'm not following it in terms of gauge or weight of yarn. I have some yarn in stash. I have 2 advents of mini skeins, and then I have a bunch of gray yarn right here, and none of the colors I'm particularly excited about wearing on my body. If you've purchased an advent, that is expensive. Expensive. So I wanted to make something that like is useful and practical, and I'm not just going to make some kind of garment just for the sake of making a garment and then never wear it. So I'm making a blanket. The world's most expensive blanket. You heard it here. Expensive blanket. Naturally, I'm in the middle of a row, but I've just joined in my 4th color. So it's knit in mosaic. It's got some fun little purl bumps, and I have 2 advents that I'm incorporating into this. I've broken them down into little plastic bags where I've kind of grouped colors that I want to put next to each other. Balanced, I guess. But I also don't want to think about it that much. So this is my solution. It's kind of a little mix between random and non-random. Oh, the reason I picked this particular blanket pattern is that there will be no ends to weave in. I toyed with the idea, because I knew I wanted to make a blanket. I thought about making the Stella quilt blanket. I thought about making the Candy Shop blanket. What put me off of all of those was the number of ends to weave in. This one, I'm not gonna have any, because the ends, that's not part of it. Make little tassels. Obviously they're not all trimmed, they're different lengths at the moment, but I've just been tying them off to keep it nice and tight and tidy. And then if I wanted to, I could also add tassels on the other side of the blanket. Probably won't. So it's gonna be tassels on one side, and I think that is like perfect. Perfect. I hate weaving in ends. And the thought of weaving in 800 billion ends on this blanket, or any blanket, put me off. So it's a free pattern. It's in my, I'll link it below, but it's also gonna be in my Ravelry. If you're looking for a blanket pattern to kind of use up some scraps, or a big chunk of main color yarn that you're not really sure what to do with, I would recommend that one. Take a look. The stitch pattern is easy to adapt into whatever gauge you want. My next whip is the Oxbow Socks by Andrea Mowry. I have made very little progress on this since our last video. I almost didn't talk about it, but I did work on it, so I thought I would. I'm loving the color. Oh, it's so beautiful. And for some reason, I just have not been picking up the sock pattern. Whenever that was, January or February or something, I knit 2 pairs of socks in 1 month. And now I've completely lost my sock knitting mojo. I kind of think it's the pattern, like the texture. I don't find it super enjoyable to knit. I like the finished look of it, but to knit it, I'm not that into it. I guess I could restart. I'm at the point where I'm not even sure I'm done the full leg. I don't do my socks super long. So I was at the point where I was like, oh, I'll measure it against a couple other pairs of socks and then we'll see. And I just never did that. The yarn that I'm using is Farmer Daughter Fibers from their 2025 sock club. This is the color Luna Moth, and it comes in a little sock set. So it's kind of like this peachy and then green, and this green is beautiful. I love it. I also really liked the January color. This was the February color. I'm imminently expecting the March color. Okay, my last whip before I can show you the other swatch that I made is so fresh you can barely call it a whip. I am only on the 2nd row. So this is the very early beginnings of the Oleander pullover by Audrey Borrego. It is a bottom up, all over lace, 26 stitches per 10 centimeter sweater. I am knitting this in, what is this? The Wandering Flock Cotton Lino in the color Sand. This is a alpaca cotton linen silk blend. And this is what I'm gonna work on for the knit along. I'm not gonna work on it very much until the knit along actually starts, but I do know, like, this is gonna take me a long time. Ideally, I would like to finish this pattern while the knit along is taking place that Natalie and I are gonna host. And I don't know that if I wait until April to get going on it, that I'm actually gonna finish in time. I'm a really, really slow lace knitter. I don't knit lace very often. And so I thought I would cast on. I had to cast on over 350 stitches for my size. I have all the stitch markers in there, which hopefully you can see, to help me mark the lace repeats. And this was my first time using a twisted German cast on. In the pattern, she does link to a really good tutorial, but it was a lot of stitches to do a twisted cast on for over 350 stitches. Almost did me in. And then that first setup row, oh my god, is there anything worse than the first setup row of like knitting onto a cast on? Oh, and to do it for 350 stitches, kill me now. So that one is a, bottom up, drop shoulder, all over lace. The pattern does have a V-neck, which I'm going to modify into a round neck. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to do ribbing or some kind of, I don't know, like a rolled neckline. We'll see. It's way too far away for that to be a consideration. And there's one other thing. Oh, yes. So I did my swatch. I think I'm going to be playing Yarn Chicken, so I actually unwound my swatch, so I can't show it to you. But I didn't notice this originally when I was looking at the pattern, but the cast on edge, there is no ribbing. Like, you can do ribbing, but it doesn't call for ribbing. And then the lace is made by doing some increases and doing some decreases. And actually the edge creates like a little scallop. And it's so cute. And so I noticed that when I was doing my cast on, and I went and looked at the pattern and realized that it did that. And I was like, oh my god, that's adorable. I can't wait. So now I'm even more excited. And yeah. That's it. Not everything. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is really just more of a show and tell, which is my new swatch. This is for the KAL pullover by Irene Lynn. I just swatched this last night. I love the color. So this is, the yarn is called Ovis Etc. Igne in the color Curry. It is a really beautiful, it's like a mustard yellow. Oh, it's gorgeous. But I'm knitting this 2 strands held together. It is a 20 stitch per 10 centimeter gauge. So, and this is a fingering to sport weight yarn, so it's not thick enough to hold single. I'm knitting with it double. I did 2 swatches. The first one was way too small. The second one I did size up, and I'm good on the needle size now. But I was working with it and I was like, I don't know if I like this. And it was like such a weird feeling. The yarn blend is wool, ramie, and silk, and ramie is a cellulose fiber of some type. I actually don't know what it is, but like it was creating this like very stiff texture, but not stiff in the way that you think of when you think of like a really structured yarn. I don't really know how to describe it. I didn't like it, but I was like, okay, you have all this yarn, at least block the swatch. And so I blocked the swatch, and that was the game changer, because now it's nice and drapey and I have no doubts. But that was very much like a trust the process situation, where as I was knitting it and I was like, I'm gonna end up with like a monster. Like, I'm not gonna, what is happening? But now that I've blocked my swatch, I can show it to you, and it's beautiful. The color is just like incredible. I intend that, like, I might do a few more rows today or something on my Oleander pullover, but I'm gonna get going on this one because I'm much more excited to work on this than I am to work on my Aiode sweater. It's just like, this color is doing it for me. It's just doing it for me. That is everything that I have to talk about today. Thank you so much for joining. I'm really excited with this knit along. Go check Natalie out at her YouTube. I will link it below. And you can come check us out on Instagram if you'd like. It's the same for both of us. So I'm Beans and Skeins on Instagram. She's a knit cheek on Instagram. And yeah, I'd love to know if you're planning on partaking, if you have any pattern suggestions. And yes, thanks so much for sitting with me and listening to me ramble about my yarn and my knitting. See you next time. Bye.